You know, I'll tell you, Charles, just as I hit the start button, I lamented not having that song, Where Everybody Knows Your Name. People know Norm's name now. How are you, Charles?
Very well done, Jason. I believe the promotions department has really been up to its an amazing Olympiad level of accomplishment in the last 24 hours. You should probably clue everybody in to your latest.
Yeah, I think a lot of people who are regular viewers saw that the other day. You know, I've been going down to the courthouse a lot, Charles, and truthfully, I was upset that I wasn't being allowed into the trial to cover the trial. But now that it's close to the end, in retrospect, my coverage of what was going on outside the trial, and specifically the NYPD and the New York Court Police, preventing me, and I presume other people, from getting in, it represents a very dangerous, we've spoken a lot about censorship in the First Amendment. We're going to be in the First Amendment Forum, actually, in just about 25 minutes. People can join us there on odyssey.com/@crowdsourcethetruth, crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com, and Subscribestar, and Patreon/crowdsourcethetruth. But the thing is, Charles, it's this kind of abuse of the First Amendment. It's terrible. I would much rather just be able to do one video that everybody can watch and be able to make a decent living, exercising our rights, abiding by the law, talking about facts and evidence and things that you and I see in the public domain. Other people might look at those same facts and come to other conclusions. But our opinions and our ability to exercise the First Amendment and the audience's ability to exercise the First Amendment by choosing what they get to listen to has been curtailed not only online by things like Twitter, but outside that courthouse by the cops. And they joke about it. Oh, you don't have a press pass. I need a license to exercise the First Amendment in New York City. But persistence pays off, and I did get to have this lovely little chat with everybody's pal, Norm Eisen. Let me just play this if there's anybody who hasn't heard it. Norm. Exactly the guy I wanted to speak to.
I'm sorry, I'm on a call.
Well, it doesn't matter because you're a fucking liar who set this all up, and Costello just exploded your bullshit. You're going to jail, bro. What's the matter?
Officer, this gentleman is harassing me.
I'm not harassing him. I'm asking him questions. This is a guy who's lied to set up this whole trial. Norm, I'm not harassing you. I'm asking about how you've lied to set up this whole trial, how you've obviously coerced Michael Cohen to pay Stormy Daniels out of his own money. That's exactly what Costello testified to, and that you're lying about, Norm. Why are you lying, Norm? You are destroying this country, you know that? You're gonna go to jail, Norm. Jail, Norm. They like guys like you in jail. You know what happens to you in jail, Norm? So, had some words with Norm there. And
Very well done.
Thank you. A lot of people have seen it, Charles. In the first 26 hours, not 24, unfortunately, but this video hit 1 million views. That's my first video to achieve 1 million views, I would guess, ever. And also an excellent demonstration of the Jedi mind trick on the cop. I didn't harass him, and then you just walk away.
Yeah. Well, so dare I say, in addition to being an abuse of the First Amendment, this is an abuse, and Norm Eisen and Andrew Weissman and Robert Mueller and James Comey and a whole bunch of them illustrate in their abuse of the judicial process the dangers of there being monopolistic power in individual districts of the country, where a district attorney, where a U.S. attorney can rely on the reality that there are jury pools that are close to 100% Democratic or 100% anti-Trump that can be used as the forum in which to place a defendant, and as a first step, and then in a second step, read the riot act to the defendant and explain to that defendant, as was explained, we know firsthand from Jerry Corsi, by Weissman to Corsi, that in the process that they get stuck into, you have no probability of getting acquitted, and that you'll be convicted out of spite. Now, you may be able to appeal if you're young enough and you've got the bucks, but actually, in my opinion, what Weissman, what Obama, what Eisen, what the Clintons, what these various pukes, Goldman and others, have been doing here is to illustrate vividly the dangers of monopolistic power in the court system. This is an abuse that has to be redressed. We are tiptoeing around this, not you, but we, the country, and the polite discourse in the corporate-owned media, we're tiptoeing around this problem. In New York City, specifically in Manhattan, in Washington, D.C., in the center of Chicago, in San Francisco, in Los Angeles, you could go city after city. Many of them are failing, these cities. These rogue Soros-backed prosecutors in league with Barack Obama, James Comey, and others are doing their level best to protect the perpetrators of the massive levels of corruption that have occurred, I would argue, ever since around 1988. You can say there are other problems before then, but 1988, the globalist elites, fake elites, have been subverting the Constitution, destroying the rights of normal Americans to advance and perpetuate a corrupt scheme whereby puppets, and I say Barack Obama is a puppet who's guided by puppeteers like Weissman and Eisen. These puppets are placed in ostensibly into positions of high power and visibility, while the scallywags, the criminals behind the scenes, do what they can do to loot this system, whether it is pushing on all of us, most recently the COVID scam, and allowing perhaps the people funding this lawfare exercise, the pharmaceutical companies, to profit at the expense of the vulnerable, whether it's the situation in Ukraine or whatever the next war will be with Russia or other people that these folks are trying to foist on it. And these people get away with bullshit. What Eisen, what Weissman, what Mueller, what a long list of people have done with this lawfare. Lawfare, to me, should be, if not made illegal.
Oh yeah,
I mean, there shouldn't be lawfare. That's a fourth branch of government here, right? These guys
it's war.
operate right. These guys have declared war on the Constitution. Many of them are doing it in the guise, here you have Brookings, of nominally tax-exempt institutions. They've gamed the IRS and the Department of Justice. That is the part that would prosecute people for tax fraud. And we need a great purge and cleansing after November 2024. And first on the list for the tidy bowl cleaner has to be Norm Eisen or a group of people, including Norm Eisen. And you go for these are really low fish. They're senior people, but they're low fish. Yeah. They need to be put in a place, just as they tried to do illegally using lawfare. The legal system needs to be trained on these people, and they need to sing about who orchestrated this, who is funding this. And all of these people belong in prison after a trial and jury by their peers. We need to revisit, for example, Sussman, who, how that Sussman trial went down and why he got off, how much corruption was involved with that, who was protecting Sussman. And, that's what the election of 2024 has to be about. Not abortion, not, actually relatively minor issues compared to the corruption of the judicial system. If the entire judicial system goes under, nobody is safe in this country. And we head towards being Haiti.
Yeah. And, Charles, you and I have been talking about lawfare, both as a practice and also this nonprofit. It's the thing. It's one of these sort of socially engineered words where, like, Black Lives Matter. That statement means something, but obviously when you attach it to an improperly run nonprofit foundation, it takes on new meaning. Same thing is happening with lawfare. It's a verb. It's a noun. It's a proper noun. It's all these different things, but people are starting to talk about it. We've gone from a place where nobody had ever heard the term before to where it was definitely being thrown around as a buzzword. And now, particularly with the Trump, so-called hush money trial coming to a head as it did with Robert Costello's testimony, I think people are getting a lot of insight into the nuance of lawfare and how it's all going to play out. I want to play one other video for you that has gotten about 1/10 as much attention as the Norm video, but it features our friend, and I use that term ironically, but this is the editor-in-chief of the Lawfare blog and also the director of the Lawfare Foundation. This is Ben Wittes. Let's give a listen to this. Whoops. Ben Wittes, my man, how you doing? You're here for the Lawfare, aren't you? Hey, listen, motherfucker, you are a liar. You set this whole thing up. You, Andrew Weissman, and what's his name, Norm Eisen, you guys got Michael Cohen to set this whole thing up with Stormy Daniels. He paid her with his own money. Costello just testified to that. You're such a fucking liar, it's insane. What's with all this money that gets sent to your house for the nonprofit? That's criminal. You should go to jail for that. And your nonprofit, the Lawfare Institute, has paid over $300,000 to Vindman since he lied on the stand. All of you fucking guys are gonna go to jail. Do you know that? Why did you come over here? See, it's interesting how the police come right over to Mr. Wittes. Isn't that so interesting? They run right over. They know exactly who that fucking scumbag is. The police do know who he is. That might have been a coincidence. There were a lot of police having lunch in that area. But the point of this video, although it is fun and exciting to verbally trash Ben Wittes, and there's some lowbrow comedy aspect to it, the thing that I really do like about both of these videos, Charles, is that in a short, digestible moment that has all the whiz-bang, fighting action that a broad audience would appreciate, I was really, and I don't even know how I did this, because obviously I didn't write those things. I didn't know that Ben Wittes was about to walk out. I didn't know that Norm was about to walk out. But in both instances, luckily, and thanks in huge part to the help and the guidance and the stuff that I've learned from working with you, I was able to consolidate in about a minute to each of those guys really the essence of what this whole entire thing is about. It's not all this complicated stuff about business records and did Weisselberg say this about paying that much to this attorney in response to this thing. It's about these guys coming up with, when you cut through all the elaborate set dressing, a simple, stupid lie that they have been pushing for the past 8 years.
Or longer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, this is a team of of legal assassins. They're lawyers. I don't know if Wittes is a lawyer, but Norm Eisen's a lawyer. And I think, wasn't Eisen a classmate of Obama's at Harvard Law School? And he was made ambassador, I think, to the Czech Republic.
Yep.
And when you read, frankly, this is your term, the bullshit that is in the rules of rules of professional conduct for lawyers drafted by the ABA, when you read what you're supposed to do and what you're supposed to avoid doing, because these people like Norm Eisen, who's an unscrupulous bastard, frankly, is just a political operative who he believes he's never going to be caught. That's why he's doing what he's doing. He's my analogy that I talk about. He's playing hearts, trying to shoot the moon, knowing that he's got a good chance of doing so because the game is rigged. But, if you were to look at his conduct, the conduct of Weissman and the conduct of many others on the Weissman team, the Mueller team, the Enron task force and others, you would see that all these people are in flagrant violation of the rules of professional conduct being lawyers. That's before you get to the issue of, are they actually breaking laws? And, I think this effort to torpedo Trump using these spurious lawsuits, if it is just an informal thing, and it's not coordinated using something like journalists or the like, or whatever the medium was they were using on Twitter, if it's informal, maybe you can say it's okay. But if there's a connection to the Biden reelect campaign and the Biden campaign, this is a gross abuse of the electoral process and the judicial process. And a lot of heads need to roll, figuratively. I'm not saying people should be killed for this, but I think their ability to hold positions of trust and practice their profession should be eliminated. And made more difficult. Not only should they not be able to practice after they get out of jail, but when they're in jail, they shouldn't be able to help inmates.
Exactly. That's the only thing that's going to prevent them from having a fun time in the shower. The interesting thing that I observed, Charles, is that right after So just to recap what happened yesterday, we had a second day of cross-examination of who is really the star witness in this case, this attorney, Robert Costello. And I detect that this whole sort of battle between Judge Mershon and Costello was the result of the fact that Robert Costello is not the type of guy that anybody can push around. He's a very smart, very tough, very experienced prosecutor from New York, and he has the evidence. I've revealed to the audience that I had an opportunity to speak to him on Sunday and share all these insights about lawfare, something he told me he hadn't considered and found to be an interesting point of view. I got the impression that when he left the phone call, he would consider that point of view. And he also said that it answered other questions that he had in his mind, because he knew that all the people surrounding this case were from the Eastern District of New York U.S. Attorney's Office, but he hadn't, I set off a light bulb over his head that I hope impacted the testimony, because I think what he did yesterday was fantastic. And surely like lawfare clockwork, Charles, when the case in New York exploded and everybody with a brain in their head, which doesn't include Norm Eisen, realizes that this is an absolute disaster, we saw another lawfare whack-a-mole operative pop up from the hole, another Eastern District of New York alum, Burl Howell, the judge in the Mar-a-Lago documents case. Magically, yesterday, right after all this happened, Judge Burl Howell cited, among other things, the discovery of additional classified documents found at Mar-a-Lago months after the FBI search of the property. Isn't that an amazing coincidence, Charles? Another person from the Eastern District of New York coming in the nick of time with more legal jeopardy for Donald Trump in another spinning plate.
Yeah, it's desperation because, the chain of custody on the Mar-a-Lago raid was broken, I think. And so I don't believe that case will move. Anything pertaining to the Mar-a-Lago raid will not be adjudicated in my mind until after the election. I just don't see how, the Eileen Cannon, I guess, is it Cannon?
Yes.
On Jack Smith. I mean, she's got all kinds of rulings to make. She's put, I think, Jack Smith, it would seem, on notice that he indeed is under the microscope. And again, you shouldn't need to win using a rigged system, right? I mean, that's what the progressives were arguing about in the 60s. The establishment was an old boy network. No one else had a chance. That's not fair. Let's change everything. Free love and all that kind of stuff. And now what they have had in place really since Obama and maybe beforehand under Clinton, they've had a rigged system where Democrat in theory means good in the public eye and mind, and Republican means evil. And you get to trash a guy like Trump, who actually advanced the lives or made it possible for women and blacks and other minorities and people without college degrees to do really well from January 2017 until COVID hit. I mean, he did a lot more for the average person than any recent president, especially including Obama. And, people just trashed that presidency night and day. People, I think, certainly obstructed the election of 2020. And who knows what may have really happened when we get to the bottom of 2020. And in contrast, they've been saying at every turn since January 20th, 2021, this dunderhead, this man who cannot, I mean, it's really at this point almost piling on to talk about all the mistakes the guy makes on a daily basis. That is to say, Joe Ray-Ban Biden, in his various speeches. Yesterday, I gather, he was in New Hampshire and he tried to describe some act and he couldn't even get the name right. It sounded like Puxatawny Phil.
The Yakalaka Aka Act, or whatever he said. It's so stupid.
Right. And the press just doesn't jump all over him. I mean, if you were to take the gaffes that Biden has made in the last week and do a thought experiment, go back to 2019, after they had defeated the attempt to impeach him, was it 2019, early 2020? What would have happened to Trump after impeachment one had failed if Trump made the gaffes that Biden has made in the last week? Right? When Trump had difficulty at West Point walking down a modest incline on a very hot day in new leather-soled shoes, the entire media corps was all up, invoked the 25th Amendment, and his hand apparently was shaking when he was drinking water. I mean, they seized on that, but they give Joe Biden a pass, confirming that adage, a lie will travel halfway around the world before the truth has a chance to catch up. Well, maybe the truth with your Norm thing is catching up. Maybe Crowdsource the truth is catching up.
I hope so, Charles. They've spent a lot of time, money, and effort trying to destroy it. Just to put a little more detail on something that you said, I agree completely, but I don't know that it's just Democrats that are subjected to this. It's anybody who's not on board for their crooked plan, because it's interesting to observe. Jonathan Turley is a guy who I've spoken to a handful of times. I can't say that I know him. I'm sure he doesn't know my name. I'm interested in his legal analysis because he does seem like an extremely intelligent, even-handed, and obviously very experienced attorney. But I'm also becoming increasingly intrigued by the notion that people like Jonathan Turley, serious, experienced attorneys, until this event, they thought that, everything that I'm talking about is a conspiracy theory. But I think that they are being forced. They have these conflicting ideas. This is a cognitive dissonance issue for serious attorneys like Jonathan Turley and even Costello. Turley said that Robert Costello was a kill shot witness, and I totally agree. What I'm commenting on is the fact that these guys are so entrenched in a system like doctors. I do not believe that most doctors are intent on harming people, but I do acknowledge that a lot of doctors fall into a sort of conventional thinking type of operating that causes them to sort of get sucked in to what we saw in COVID can be social engineering. Same thing with the lawyers. They think, wait a minute, when I spoke to Costello about the possibility that Michael Cohen called him to speak about retaining him and that was a ruse, he had never even thought about that. He went to the meeting in good faith at the Regency Hotel to ask Michael Cohen all kinds of questions and details about his case because it was an initial meeting with an attorney where Cohen was seeking representation. That's why Cohen had to sign the waiver of the attorney-client privilege. They tried to get a Perry Mason moment yesterday with Costello in the court by questioning him about where is the retainer agreement and were you actually retained by Cohen? The answer to that question is he was not retained by Cohen, but it doesn't matter because they still discussed attorney-client privileged details in the course of Cohen seeking representation. So I think what happened was when they realized they could not make a fool out of Robert Costello, we saw the judge cleared the room of press, which Alan Dershowitz, who I also don't like, who is also a Democrat, but did raise the excellent point that was a violation of the First Amendment because you can't kick the press out of the court. You can say that we're not going to allow cameras during the proceedings, but you can't go, that's Star Chamber. He's yelling at Costello while nobody can witness that.
Well, again, isn't Merchant out of his depth? I mean, Merchant is a judge, but he's not qualified, I don't think, or he doesn't have experience, or he's not in the court, part of the court that deals with complex business transactions.
That is Engoron that you're thinking about. This is a different matter. But Merchant is out of his depth because what they're doing is the New York State court is prosecuting someone for a federal violation. What he's doing is he's out of his jurisdiction. And again, none of this is legal advice because I'm not a lawyer, but this is what I observe from listening to lawyers and looking at what's going on. Charles, we've only got about another minute until we make our way over to the First Amendment Forum, where we'll be able to get into more depth with some of these topics, and people can join us on odyssey.com/at Crowdsource the Truth and Substack and Patreon and all the others. Take us out, if you would, Charles, before we head over there.
Sure. I'd just say that maybe we'll do a show one time about the Merchant of Menace.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I love it. All right. And with that, Charles, wonderful little humorous interlude there. We will be right back, everybody. Please stay with us. There's a lot to discuss about this topic. It's still unfolding. And now the judge, Charles, we could have had jury deliberations today and tomorrow, but he gave everybody like a 7 or 8 day weekend to go and infect the jury with outside information. Nothing about this trial is being run normally. So we'll be right back and we'll talk about all that. Thanks for watching, everybody.